Zurich Film Festival. Conversations that celebrate cinema. 'Cause life is better with movies.
Welcome, Hildur. It's so nice to have you here.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
So the panel discussion will be around 40 minutes, and after that we have around 20 minutes for Q&A, so you can already think about your questions. And yes, I would love to start already with listening to your music, with maybe the most famous piece of your work for now, the bathroom dance from Joker. It's a pivotal scene in the film directed by Todd Phillips, where the main character, failed clown comedian Arthur Fleck, dances in the bathroom in an expressive, cathartic choreography, which leads him towards his slow descent into madness and into becoming the Joker. So, if I'm correct, the scene wasn't written like this into the script. So what was the process behind this iconic scene, and how did the music influence it?
Yeah. So, when Todd originally asked me to score the film, he said, I'm doing this Joker film, and do you want to score it? And I originally said, no, not really. I don't know if I'm the right person for that. As we were talking about yesterday, superheroes aren't really my direct point of interest, my obvious point of interest. But he said, well, read the script and then you'll understand why. Mm-hmm. And so I read the script, and then I understood, and I really just thought it was such an interesting take on this character, and there was such an intimate take and such a kind of different point of view to this character that we all kind of know so well. And obviously this was long before they shot anything, and Todd said to me, well, it would be great if you just take what you feel from the script and start writing music from there. Which I did. I was very happy to, because I felt the script very strongly. Like I really felt that it was really clear to me that this was a person who was really having a hard time kind of finding his emotion, but even if he's like full of them, so it felt like he was a bit stuck in his place. But so he's like very emotional, but didn't really know where to put them and what to do with them. So I had a really kind of clear sense of the tonality that I felt was right for the film. So I recorded this music, and when I was recording it, I was really feeling this type of movement that came with it. Obviously also because when you play the cello, you're kind of in this type of movement world. So But I never talked to Todd about that. So that was just something that was, I kept to myself, because I was like, I don't want to freak him out, because there's no mention of choreography anywhere in this in the script. So I sent him the music, and he was just like, yes, that's exactly it. This is the music for the film. And then they start shooting, and this was one of the kind of the first things that they were shooting. And in the script, the scene is like, it's very minimal actually. It's something like, he throws away the gun, looks in the mirror and says shit. Or it was a very non scene. And Joaquin said that he just wasn't really feeling the scene. He was just like, I don't really understand what's happening here, and I'm not connecting to the scene as it's written. So Todd said to him, well, why don't you just listen to Hildur's music and let that guide you? So he did, and he puts it on, and Joaquin just starts kind of like dancing to it, and Larry starts moving the camera with him, and then all of a sudden like everyone is just in this kind of doing this impromptu dance, and that's how that happened.
Wow, it came together so beautifully.
Yeah.
And I heard that you also used a very special instrument on that score, the Dorophone or Halldorophone that was made by your friend. So is it actually in this scene, or how did you use it? And maybe could you quickly explain the instrument? I mean, I could try, but you're better at this.
Yeah, so the Dorophone is it's a really long form collaboration with my friend Hildur, who originally started working on that instrument because he couldn't play an instrument, and he was really bummed when he came to parties when we were teenagers and everyone was having a jam session and he didn't have anything to play, so he made this instrument that was originally a guitar, and it's like a kind of feedback mechanism, and then he wanted to kind of take that idea to a next step, and so he changed the body from a guitar to a cello because he thought that the only person that would have the patience to play anything like that would be me. So we've had this dialogue with this instrument for about like maybe 18 years now, and I have about 6 versions of it. It's very slow dialogue. Yeah. It's a very, very slow conversation. But so the beautiful thing about that is that it has the ideas of a cello. It has the cello neck and cello strings, but it has 2 sets of strings, so it has 8 strings altogether. Every string has a pickup, and there's a speaker on the back, so it kind of makes this, it can be very loud, and it just it becomes this kind of cello monster. But also when you play it acoustically, I think it's really interesting that I'm just, I've played the cello my whole life, and I'm really, I love it. But I think it's quite interesting, the kind of the preconceived ideas that we have about the instrument. And I'm kind of curious about preconceived ideas about anything, really, because it makes me want to challenge it. So I kind of love playing this instrument acoustic because it's really a shitty acoustic instrument, and I love trying to coerce emotions out of things that is not really supposed to have any emotions, and that's so the solo instrument that most people take as a cello is actually the Halldorophone, and the quality that it gives this kind of that you would, played on a cello, it could potentially end up being kind of like romantic and maybe even cheesy, but the quality of the sound of the Dorophone makes it kind of like difficult, and it's like something is off about it. It's like it's almost a cello, but it's not, and that's what I love about it, and I always that's what I think is really fitting for this character, because he's like, he's maybe almost funny, but he's really not. He's like, everything that he does is like, he's like almost, connecting to people, but then he's not, and it's, and I love that about his character.
And the sound really connects with the DNA of the film and your music and your musical DNA, which is so nice how everything comes together. So you touched upon it earlier. So when you got this gig, the thoughts that must have gone through your mind, this big legacy of this whole universe, of the fandom, of everything that already existed. How was that for you? And when did you know, oh, this is gonna be big?
Yeah, it's really funny. There's no way of knowing what's gonna be, big and what's not. I think that all you can do is try to enjoy the process and really be there for the process, because at the end of the day, the process of creating something is all there is, and then when it goes out in the world, you have absolutely zero to do with where it ends up and who hears it and what people perceive it as, and so I'm really like, the process for me is everything, and when I write music, I'm actually more interested in the process than the outcome, and that's maybe kind of backwards to some people, but but I think, I just think if I'm not curious and excited and really devoted to the process, I have less of a connection to the work, and then I think automatically the audience is going to have less connection to the work as well. If I'm not really feeling it, So I remember, well, both actually when I finished Joker and Chernobyl. I guess Chernobyl in particular. I put so much work into this project, and I really I spent months listening to these really intense recordings of this nuclear power plant, and it was a really intense process. And then, I was I finished delivered the series, and did the mixes for the album, and I remember saying to the my engineer that was working with me, I said wow, it's so bizarre to put so much work into something and no one's going to hear it. I was there is no way that anyone is going to want to listen to this, So, and that's really what I believed. I really thought that people were not going to be that interested, and I was, wrong about that. So, and some things that I think people are going to be excited about, they're not, and I think it's just the way, the way things go, and you can't control it, and you can't really. I think the only way to keep on working on anything creative is to try to be as kind of unattached to the perception of your work than to the process.
Yes, and to enjoy the process and find curiosity in it and new things, because you cannot control the ultimate end, and shouldn't be your goal.
No, and you spend so much time. These projects take forever. I was working on Joker for 2.5 years or something. Because this is also part of that. How I work, because I start so early. So it's it takes such a long time. And if you don't enjoy it, it's just you're. It's why else would you do it?
Yeah, I completely connected with that statement. Yeah. But with Joker, you did receive the Oscar. And yes, what a moment that must have been. And I watched also when you had your speech, and I quickly want to quote something that you said that really connected to me, and a short personal anecdote from me. So when I started studying film scoring, I was really motivated, and then I wanted to do this vision board, and I remember I printed out my favorite composers, and it was Clint Mansell, Jerry Goldsmith, Alexandre Desplat, and then I printed out these heads, and then I noticed these are all men, and suddenly I started to really doubt myself, because I thought, well, if I don't really have an evidence that this can be done by a woman, who am I to believe that I can do this? And then I started to connect with other women, started to seek role models, and then when you had this big win, it meant a lot to all of us women as well, and especially your beautiful speech, which was to the girls, to the women, to the mothers, to the daughters, who hear the music bubbling within, please speak up, we need to hear your voices. And this message was really heard. Thank you so much for that.
No, I think that that means a lot, and I think that this is something that I didn't fully realize myself until about maybe 15 years ago or so, because I grew up in Iceland, and we had the first female president ever was Icelandic, and she was president my whole childhood, and we had, Björk, of course, who was just doing such an incredible, such amazing music, and so groundbreaking artist. And, she's a woman. They were both single moms, and women. And my grandmother was one of the first female doctors in Iceland. And she was also a single mom, did just groundbreaking, incredible work. So I grew up with these role models. I grew up with believing that there was nothing that women could do. And my grandmother always said to me, she said don't you ever dare let anyone tell you you can't do anything, you know, that you are really interested in, that you want to do just because of, you know, your gender or whatever. And she was just like, it is your responsibility to just like go out there and just like do the thing that you want to do, and just like don't let anyone ever tell you otherwise. So that was, you know, that was how I grew up, and I thought that was normal. And I really was like, you know, I never even thought about that, you know, until I moved abroad and I started playing at like, you know, experimental festivals and with bands, and I was just like, wow, what is going on here? There's no women. Like, where are the women? Like, it was just so strange to me. And then I started working in films, and, you know, again, I just like, you know, there's no women. And I started seeing these statistics, which was a real eye-opener to me. When I forget how many years ago it was that this survey came out that, you know, said that there was, of the 500 like top films that year, like 1% of them was scored by women, and that 1% was such a kick in the ass for me, because I was just like, wow, this is not possible, you know. So then that kind of made me realize how privileged I had been as a woman growing up in Iceland, and you know, having the you know, seeing all these strong women there, and that made me kind of aware that, you know, getting these chances that I was getting was not a given for a woman, and I had to fight really hard to get those jobs in the beginning, and I got told a lot, like, you know, I got asked like, yeah, but there's no way that you can handle this. You're a woman, right? You know, and it's not so long ago. I mean, you guys remember, I mean, it was just like, even after I won the Oscar, I was still like, but yeah, she can't handle this. I mean, she's, you know, how on earth is she can handle this orchestral piece or whatever, you know? And I'm just like, what? Why? Why wouldn't women be able to write music? You know? And I just would love. I love, you know. I'm really interested in women. I'm really interested in people. Really interested in people, and women are half of the people. You know. So yeah. I think excluding half of people is just really missing out on half of, you know, the stories that those people could be telling, you know. So
yeah, and I think the ratio is slowly changing. In my study course where I graduated, there's, I think, a third are women, or even more every year. It's more women. Yeah. And initiatives like from the AWFC, I could participate in a program 3 years ago where I had a mentor. And yeah, I think all these things and having visibility like yourself really helps to change the ratio. So it's a good thing.
Yeah, I really hope that it's changing. But I really would like to see it happening a bit more and faster, though, because, you know, I heard these statistics about the schools, but I really would love to see these women come out into the world and to get like, you know, bigger jobs that are like more visible also. And I think there's still, that's happening too slowly in my opinion. And I really would hope that to see more change, you know, happening faster, because I feel like, you know, I think it's the same with women directors. Like I'm almost pointing at my peoples here. So Nia obviously being one of them, and I feel like I'm seeing more women directors. Like I think there was 5 of the 6 Emmy nominations this year, I think, were women or something like this, right? So I would love to see these kind of numbers in the composition, you know.
We're gonna get there.
Yes,
yes,
I
we're
hope
gonna
so.
get there.
I hope so.
Yes. And you also talked about Chernobyl. We also have a clip to watch. So for those who haven't seen it, Chernobyl is a HBO miniseries that dramatizes the 1986 Chernobyl nuclear disaster. And the clip we're going to see is The Bridge of Death. I remember when I watched the series, I was haunted by the sound. I mean, of course, by the whole atmosphere of the series, but also the sound design, the music. I watched it during 4 days and I could not really focus on anything else. And I was just anxious like this. So It's an incredible soundtrack, and I heard that you recorded the sounds at a nuclear power plant, and so the whole soundtrack is merged from these sounds, and that is also a collaborative process. So how was that? How did that soundscape develop?
Yeah, so so when I read the script for Chernobyl, I thought that one of the biggest characters of the series is the radiation.
Yeah.
And that's the most kind of like ominous presence in the series, and that's like the character that you can't see and you can't capture with anything that you have on the screen. And it doesn't exactly have, like, radiation doesn't have a sound or a color. So I felt like it would really kind of fall on the music to be the radiation of the series. And I felt like, okay, what does radiation sound like? And after, some pondering about that, I really felt like in order to, because it's based on real events, right? I felt like it needed to be actually radioactive, like the sounds, and I didn't really feel like having any like regular instruments was going to cover that, and I didn't kind of want to storm into this story with a string orchestra or something. I just thought that would be kind of cheap to do that. So I basically decided to do the whole score with a nuclear power plant as the only instrument in the film. So I went to Ignalina, which is the sister power plant of Chernobyl, to record the power plant itself, and I went there with Chris Watson and Sam Slater. And Chris is like, he's like the most brilliant field recording expert there is. So going into that space and listen to it with him, it's like, it's incredible, it's such a privilege to listen with people that have like a real deep listening, because I think it changes the way that you listen as well. So going in there with him and capturing these sounds, we had to wear like full hazmat suits, and every single piece of gear was scanned for radiation back and forwards, and so it was like the whole thing was a really big process. And also just going into the space, because obviously, this whole story happens in this power plant. So just understanding the scope of the space that the power plant was really influential also to me, just like understanding how to approach the music, because these spaces are enormous. So just to get from point A to B, like you walk through these corridors that are just, they feel like 5 kilometers long, and you have to, so when you start working there, you have to have like a training of, I think it's like 3 months of training that you have to have before you can just walk like through a quarter of the space by yourself. Like it's ginormous, so it's like so easy to get lost. So just understanding that size of, when these people are, they're having these panics about what's going on, and they have to run through these corridors, like just understanding the distance of what they're running, or like, the size of the turbine hall, which is like 7 stories high, but it's still like one space, like the height of the space, and it's just incredible. So I recorded a lot of sounds in the space, and then, as I was describing before, I went through just like every single millisecond of these recordings to find material that I could mold into musical material, like musical building blocks, let's say. So it was a really, really long process and very detailed. Like it was very kind of, I'd be listening to, hour 5 and 20 minutes and 35 seconds, and there's like a sound that I was like, okay, let's grab that and like move it into, so I would be just like getting these like tiny little snippets of things that I could kind of modify into music. So it was a long process, but I think it was really worth it, because I think it really to me it feels very radioactive. Like in reality, it's very radioactive because it actually the sounds are radioactive. You know,
it's fantastic. So speaking about this long process, and you also mentioned that you worked on Joker for 2.5 years and having films with these heavy topics. So how do you find a good work-life balance? Because for me, I think it's difficult sometimes to distance myself enough, and I keep thinking about it and neglect my private life because I'm so much in the zone. So, and for example, 2 years ago, Volker Bertelmann, he was also here, and he said his safe space is always cooking lunch for his family and his kids, and that's like the safe space in the ritual of the day. So do you also have any rituals, or how do you get your work-life balance set?
Yes, I would say that I love having a very structured day. That's when I feel best, is when I have like a really clear structure of my day. So I love, like, you know, I basically, the perfect day for me is, you know, I wake up and get my son to school, and then I do yoga, and then I meditate, and then I practice my voice, and then I practice my instrument, and then I'll have lunch, and then after lunch I'll write till about like 4, and then I go pick up my son, and we'll go to football training normally every single day. So, you know, and then after football training, we'll come back and have, you know, come back and have dinner, and that's normally the time that, because a lot of the times I'm working with people in LA and stuff, that's normally the time where I have to have meetings, or you know, if I am doing interviews or you know, stuff like that. Like, I normally try to do my interviews outside the football training, you know, so most of my interviews are done in my car outside the football training. Because that's like the, you know, the only dead space of the day that I have. And, you know, and then by the time that I have, you know, meetings or things with my friends in LA, then, you know, I'm normally like, you know, doing the rest of the chores, like folding laundry or, you know, cleaning the toilet or something at the same time.
That's great. Yeah, I understand it. It's interesting that a lot of artists which seem to be more, or it could be chaotic, but a lot of artists thrive in structure, and it's the same with me.
Yeah.
And I mean, yeah, can be different for everyone, but
yeah, no, it's definitely different for everyone, and I think that, you know, I just find that you can really find freedom within the structure. I find, and also when you have, you know, because so much of my practice is playing an instrument, and my instruments are very, you know, they're pretty ruthless masters, you know. It's like, you know, if you don't practice your voice, the voice is just gonna, you know, as you get older, you know, your registers are gonna drop, and you know, the voice changes, and you know, so it needs to, just like a muscle, it needs to be trained. And the cello, I mean, man, if you don't play it for a couple of days, it's just like, you know, it's they're pretty ruthless, these instruments, but I think that's also, you know, I think I found it really important because I grew up playing these instruments, and there's such a big part of where music comes from for me. So I feel like if I've kind of, you know, it's just kind of like preparing the ground for you know, preparing the soil for you know, for, you know, growing whatever, you know, vegetables or whatever you're growing. You need to nurture the soil, right? And the practicing for me is the way that I do that. And I feel like if, you know, if my muscles are more flexible, my you know, my voice is flexible, my fingers are flexible, then I have more flexibility for music to happen, you know. Then I feel like music comes more easily, like the more nurtured the soil is, you know. So, and if I just go, you know, but there are, of course, like days that are, I mean, the film industry is a ridiculous environment to work in, and it can be so stressful sometimes, and sometimes you don't have the time to do all these things, and you just have to dive straight into working. And I feel like, for me, there's a real difference in what I write if I've had the time to just kind of prepare myself, and I've really come to, you know, it took many years before I understood this, and you know, because you're always, I think you're always, when you're you always think you're doing something wrong, or you should be doing something better, or like, you kind of hard on yourself. But I think most people understand this. So when I really, really understood, like, no, this is really what I need to for music to just flow more freely, I kind of, it became all kind of easier and more fun,
Thank you so much for sharing. It's really, really valuable.
Yeah, you're welcome.
And we have one more snippet to show, and it's from Hedda, which had the European premiere yesterday. And actually the director is here with us as well, Nia da Costa. Welcome, and thank you for your beautiful film. So Hedda is based on a theater play by Henrik Ibsen, and it tells the story of a woman who is torn by suppressed desires, her marriage, her past lover, and internal pressure. So time is running, and we only have time for one question from myself until we open up the discourse. So since the director is here also, which is really nice, maybe you can share about the process, how the two of you work together, how you found the musical soundscape also and the instruments, which is maybe an unusual palette for your work or something new. So how was that process between you two?
Yeah. Okay, this is a bit of a long answer.
It's okay.
So, where do I start? So what we discussed, Nia and I, was that we really wanted the music to be, to be energetic and have forward movement and to be exciting and because I think the tricky thing when you adapt a play is that, especially like a period piece, like they can sometimes end up being kind of weighty, because there's of course like a difference in how a play and a film works. So we really wanted it to be, have energy and to not feel like heavy. So we really loved the idea of having like lots of percussion and things that were just like exciting and playful and have this energy that Hedda has, kind of like almost like the mechanics of her mind, like when she's plotting stuff and moving forward. And of course we have the band that's playing in the party, and we knew that, so we knew that there was going to be music playing in the band. So it was fun to have connections between the score and the and the band. And so the band is kind of like, it's a bit of a jazz band. So the score ended up obviously being a bit, having this kind of like jazz elements. And so I wrote this song that is kind of the love theme that we hear in the film. So that theme kind of, happens both in the score and also in the, the band that's playing it. And then we did a version of the song with lyrics that Nia wrote, which are really nice, and that's it's just like exactly the process that I love, where it's just really rich in dialogue and collaboration, and the music can really be a part of the weavings of everything, and then I also think it's exciting when you're working on a period piece, is to understand where and when the film happens. And so I was looking at England at this time in the mid 40s when the film happens, and there was this great composer that would have been starting out working at that time, who was called Cornelius Cardew, and he had like he formed an orchestra called the Scratch Orchestra, where he would in his pieces work with a combination of professional musicians and non-professionals, so like non-musicians, and do these like large-scale performances, that sound very exciting and weird, and with this mix. So in my imagination, in this party, because the whole film happens in this party, and it's a mix of like very artistic people and then the kind of stiff aristocrats. And so I was kind of imagining Cornelius Cardew being in the party and that he would be kind of starting to form these ideas of these kind of like in the after party of the you know, when they start going outside and they're all totally drunk, then he would just be having people singing together, and you have this strange mix of, you know, contrast in people. So I really wanted to capture that sort of spirit. So I went on set and spent the day with the cast and the crew, recording them singing together. So they were also, you know, when you do a film, there's like so many people involved in that process, and on set there's just like so many people that come together to make it happen. And I think that's such a beautiful thing, and I really wanted to celebrate that process and that spirit of collective collaboration. So we had this great group of people that were, you know, I think it was like, you know, the dolly operator and the gaffer and the you know, the women from the production office, and the, you know, some extras and some of the main actors, and, you know, so we just had whoever was available at, you know, not you know, being shot at that moment, they would come in and we would sing together, and so that's really the other big building block of the score is the voices of the actual people that are making the film and singing together.
That's so beautiful. Congrats on the film and the music.
Thank you.
Yes, I could talk hours with you. I had so many more questions on my notes.
Sorry, my answers are
it's
so long.
amazing. It's fantastic. Thank you so much. But now it's the opportunity to open up the discussion. There's someone with a microphone on the stairs. So if you have any questions, raise your hand and then wait with speaking until you have the microphone so we can all listen to the questions. So we have a question here. Okay, microphone is on the way. Perfect. Oh,
yeah.
okay.
Oh, should I? Okay. Yeah, hello. So I just wanted to ask about the scene from Joker, because I was wondering about the motive, which is only 2 notes. It felt like it went absolutely amazing with the image, but I kept like trying to analyze it and not really understanding why. So that's why I wanted to ask you, like, why that choice of only 2 notes that kept getting reharmonized?
Yeah, exactly. So I think that it's kind of like the fundamental idea is having it only 2 notes, is because that for me, like the way that he's dealing with things, I feel like he's trying to move forward, but he's kind of stuck. So I feel like, you know, and his kind of his anger and his anguish and his confusion about the world is really bound to not really understanding, and I feel like in that kind of repetition, like not being able to process his feelings or fit into society, or, you know, be able to like hold on to a job and kind of have some sort of forward movement. I felt like his forward movement and just like as he's trying to understand, he just becomes more and more stuck and more angry, and that therefore, like, I felt like it was it really spoke to me in that way that we stick with the 2 notes, but the 2 notes get kind of bigger and angrier, like as we move on, and then, you know, in the towards like the, you know, the later parts of the film where he's really turned into Joker and he's becoming more aggressive, like those 2 notes are just like bah, 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 you know, it's so I felt like, you know, and like sonically, instead of feeling the notes moving forward, the notes are kind of moving outwards, you know, in the orchestration, really. So that was my idea.
Thank you. All right, another question here in the front, or right? Yep.
How does modern technology enhance your film scoring, and how do you balance it with the human element to make the music an essential part of a film's view?
Yeah. I think technology is great. You know, there's lots of great things that you can use in technology, like, you know, recording techniques, and one of the things that I love the most is building instruments and mixing electronic components with acoustic instruments to modify the sound or enhance the spatialization or you know, just in general kind of enhance the sound. So I think there's lots that you can play with, and of course, you know, there's lots of things also with in terms of like virtual instruments that makes it kind of easy to do demos fast that are sounding pretty okay, and so these are all great tools and great things, but I think they also have their downfalls, you know, because I think that you know, as these libraries get better sounding, I think more and more films are, you know, not doing actual recordings, you know, and just sticking with the sample libraries, which I think is a real shame, because at the end of the day, for me, nothing beats the human performance and the human nature of being with music and experiencing music and connecting to a story. I think that the human element of that is really, really important, and I think a good example of that may be how that kind of combination for me is that the clip that we saw from Chernobyl, like, you know, the way that I capture the sounds and the way that I process them is by using technology, but the way that I access the emotion is through my voice. So my voice was the only instrument in the score, but I felt it was really crucial to have a human element in order to connect to the emotional part of the story, which is so important. So I think it's you know, both are very important elements. I think.
Thank you for your question and answer. Are there any more questions? Yes, maybe here.
So you talked about being curious and trying out with building and new instruments and stuff. I just wondered, what's next for you? What do you want to try that you haven't yet to try? What are you curious and what are you excited about?
Oh, that's a big, big question. Well, I don't know what I haven't tried yet. I haven't done. I have yet to come up with ideas. The very next thing that I'm doing right now is I'm in some ways going back to my roots, and I'm releasing my first solo album I haven't released a solo album in 10 years, so I'm going back to that, to those roots, and so I'm playing my first cello concert in 9 years in 3 weeks. So so in some ways I'm going a bit backwards, but it's been so nice to just, you know, really practice with that in mind, that I'm going to be sitting with people in a room performing, and you know, to play with my new ensemble that I just formed. I mean, it's been so nice after so long sitting by myself in a room composing. It's just sitting with my instrument with people playing. It's so magical. So I'm very excited about that, and then I have lots of exciting stuff on the horizon. There's lots of. I feel like I've been kind of holed up for about like 2-3 years, just writing like ferociously, you know, the record and Hedda, and then Nia and I have another film coming out 28 years later, part 2, that's coming out in January, exactly. So we've been working on that, and then I just finished The Bride also, which is coming out in April. So everything is kind of coming out right now that I've been doing been, you know, hiding for the last couple of years doing, and and then there's lots of exciting things that I'm probably not allowed to talk about. Yeah, but so you'll have to wait for the next masterclass to find those out. Stay tuned.
And the album is going to come out on the 31st of October, so pretty
Yeah.
soon. So keep
Halloween.
your ears open.
Exactly. The first single is out actually, if you're interested. But yeah, it was like so nice to just not just be the composer, but to play with my friends in a room. It's so fun.
Yes. All right, I think we have maybe for one more question, you in the third row. Yeah.
Thank you for your time. I wanted to ask, do you have any of your works that you are disappointed in and would like a do-over? And what do you think you learned from, like, the most from it, I guess, would be my question.
That I would like to rewrite, or you mean, or that?
Maybe just previous work that you, that in hindsight you feel could have gone differently, or like what you learned from it, I suppose, or things that you could have done differently if you had been given a do-over of it.
Yeah. Oof, that's really the curse of probably creating anything. It's really hard to let go and just put things out there, because and it's hard to listen to your own work, because it's I think you tend to be your strongest critic, and whenever I listen to something that I've done, I'm like, oh Christ, why didn't I do that differently? So the answer would probably be everything. I'd probably change everything. But, the longer I do this and the more music that I release, that I've also kind of come to just accept the imperfection of whatever it is that I'm doing. And I kind of, maybe luckily, I really quite like imperfection. Like I like when intonation is fluid and not crystal perfect, and I like I like the I like the kind of the humanness of writing and playing, and so I've become more forgiving to myself, for my past sins, so to say, and come to just see it as as all a part of just like some sort of journey I'm taking, and like some development that's happening, and I've been having lots of going over lots of old stuff now, because it's I'm coming up to these like big numbers. Like it's been, next year is 20 years since I released my first solo record. It's been 10 years since I released the last one. It's like I'm still so young, but somehow these numbers keep growing. So I've been kind of going over some like older pieces, and I've just tried to be kind to myself in that process, and it's been kind of nice to see really see what I've learned in that process. And I think that most of all, it's been really incredible to see how my friendships with the people that I worked with all of this time, how they have grown, and how our dialogue has kind of, how that comes into the work, how whether it's musicians that I'm playing with, or directors that I'm working with, or engineers that I'm working with, or people on my team, my agent and my publicist, it's like when you've been working with people over so many years, that there's so much that people change and grow, and that's really the thing that I appreciate the most, going over this older works, is that it's not just me that's changing, but it's also the these relationships are deepening, and I think that comes into the work, and that I'm super grateful for that. Like I think that's really such a privilege,
Well, that's some really beautiful closing words. Unfortunately, we have to wrap up, but this was such a wonderful conversation. Thank you for listening, for your questions. And tonight's going to be a big night for you. There's going to be the award ceremony and the concert with your music. So we'll see you later, maybe you too. And thank you so much, and enjoy the rest of the night.